Meeting to order. It is 6:02, September 26th, 2024. Alrighty, if I could call for any changes or adoption of the agenda, if anybody has any comments.
No changes that I'm aware of, Madam Chair.
I'm good.
Okay. If somebody is open to a motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Awesome, thank you. Motion on the floor, is there any discussion? All in favor? Okay, I see Al in there, thanks. Alrighty, moving on to the adoption of minutes from our May 23rd meeting. Wondering if there's any additions, comments, or changes on those?
I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes as presented.
Okay, perfect. Any further discussion? All in favor? Awesome, thank you. Alrighty, so we can move actually a little bit early if Mr. Goodeve is ready. I'll turn it over to Bert and I'm sure that we can get right started right away.
Thank you very much. And if I can speak for the length of time that I've known Sean and how we've had an opportunity to collaborate, Sean is always ready. Right, buddy? So, my pleasure to introduce to our ECDEV committee, Mr. Sean Goodeve. Sean has been a friend and colleague for many years. Sean has experience and training as both an economic development officer and as a planner. So we often wonder how he manages to balance those two sides of his soul, but he does seem to do so quite well. And with that, there's probably more I could say about you, Sean, but I'll let Sean sort of give a bit of his own intro and some of his own background. And we have retained Sean as being our primary contractor to bring forth and follow up on the SCOP grant that was received from the province. And we have the timeline, all of the details on the project are attached, and we are just at the very beginning phase of, what do we say, Sean? Finalizing our methodology and our timeline and who some of our internal and external stakeholders are. Is that a fair spot to hand it over to you?
That's a pretty. That's a great starting point for us, Bert. Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Hopefully, my audio is okay and everyone can see me all right.
You bet.
Yep, good.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks very much for the intro, and it's really nice to be here today, and it's certainly wonderful to be able to have the opportunity to work with Woodlands. I guess a little background on myself, as Bert indicated, I am an economic developer. I've been working in the field for about 22 years, I suppose, at this point. I'm also a registered professional planner, so urban planning, of course, would be kind of a part of that, so an RPP. And as Bert noted in his introduction, that does make me a bit of an anomaly within the industries in the sense of having both those designations. But I've always felt that the two professions really are synonymous with one another. And I with each project I kind of bring both the lens in terms of the economic development component, which is, as we all know, looking a lot around kind of demographic economic profiles, looking at some modeling, and leading to different types of programs, whether it's business retention expansion or investment attraction or agricultural analysis. And then certainly looking at from the planning context in terms of municipal statutory bylaws, statutory plans, bylaws, and overall planning permitting process, and looking how we can kind of be as efficient and optimal in both those regards. In terms of my background, I've held various kind of positions that have related to economic development. I've been president of a chamber of commerce. I started a downtown business association. I was chair of a tourism marketing organization. Also in the volunteer capacity, I was on the board of our national association, the Economic Developers of Canada, and I was on that board for 2 different terms. I was also on the Economic Developers of Alberta board for several years. I was chair of the Greater Edmonton Economic Development team for about 3 years, and I was doing that when I was the the economic development, manager of economic development and the director of economic development and planning for the town of Morinville when I lived in the capital region, and got to work on several exciting projects while there. I was also on the agricultural master plan committee as part of the CRB when I was in the area. And since that time, I've worked for three different municipalities, two in British Columbia and one in Alberta, as I've mentioned. Again, in the function as the head of economic development, and then another one was the director of planning for another municipality. So I've been on that side of the fence, working within a municipal structure. And then several years ago, I started working full time as a consultant. And I guess I should say I've been working as a consultant since I was in grad school, which is in 2002. But obviously kind of put that on the back burner while I was working in municipalities. And then returned to consulting full time about 4 or 5 years ago. First with MDB Insight, which was the largest economic development consultancy in Canada. That firm was acquired by Deloitte, and so I spent a couple of years working with Deloitte in their economic and policy advisory group. As of January this year, I've started Good Even Associates, and so work with several colleagues on projects across the country. And again, they are all kind of encapsulated in that larger umbrella of economic development and planning. So they range from growth strategies to market attraction efforts, investment attraction campaigns, retail market studies, and agriculture, just to kind of name a few of some of the projects. And so that's a little bit myself. I reside in Kimberley, BC, which is in the southeastern portion of British Columbia. And as Bert had indicated, we'll talk a little bit more in terms of the timelines for this project. But Bert and I have factored in several different opportunities for me to be in community. So this is kind of our first virtual, but I'll be meeting with Bert next week in person. We'll be discussing the projects while we're both at the Economic Development Association of Canada conference, and then further to that, I will be in the community in the middle of November, and that's when we're planning to start kind of our engagement. I suspect you're probably all familiar with the application and the intent, but I think kind of on the high note, really what we're looking to do is get a better sense in terms of the agricultural sector within the county. Obviously, we've got two different projects here that have been approved that are within this SCOP successful grant application, and one of which we're looking at kind of a benchmark study. So that's a broader focus and looking at what is happening in other rural municipalities with an agricultural focus. It gives us an opportunity to kind of, we're referring to this as the benchmark study, and it gives us an opportunity to kind of determine where is Woodlands positioned today, identify best practices that are taking place in other municipalities, identifying their resourcing structure and their capacity to support the agricultural industry. And then again, lessons learned and trying to determine, how that is moving forward. So we're looking to kind of give ourselves a bit of a sense in terms of, where Woodlands is positioned overall within the province. And then the other kind of component to the project is a little bit larger in scope, which is a more of a logistics market analysis, and a local market study. And this is really where we're going to be engaging many different stakeholder groups that are intersecting within the agricultural industry. And we're taking it as a very broad term, identifying, what the current situation is today within the county as it relates to the agricultural sector, identifying any barriers to success, and challenges that they may be encountering, and then looking at, various opportunities. Of course, from that, multiple stages of engagement, Bert and I identified several different points of engagement. So we'll be looking at direct interviews with those within the sector. So those be in person and also virtual, teleconference call like this, and also phone calls. We'll be looking at other methods in terms of some survey design, and all of these is to try to cast as large a net as possible in terms of our data gathering. Of course, that's primary research. as we all know. And so, of course, there'll be a whole other component here in terms of the secondary research. We'll be diving into the economics of what's happening, not just within Woodlands, but in a broader context as well. So again, it will relate in this sense, again, in terms of being able to kind of benchmark Woodlands more broadly, but separate from the benchmarking study that I referred to earlier. So not to mix our terminology here. Bert, did I do it okay? Yeah, in terms of kind of capturing the projects here and the grant.
I was just going to say, Sean, I think you did a really good job. The two things that I would like to highlight, and what I realized we didn't do off the top, is to do a quick round of introductions. So I'll just make my comment very quickly, and then maybe we'll just do those intros. But you'll notice on the meeting package, if you flip forward to about page 26, 27, we've already submitted the first interim report back to Kelly Roy. Kelly is the GOA rep that we're working with on the program, on the oversight. And we did invite Kelly to watch us live on YouTube tonight. So just in case she's watching, Kelly, hello. And so I told you we would be streaming live for you. So we'll make sure that we get the link to her for sure. And you'll notice that I think the most important thing is at the top of page 27, we do state that we anticipate no budgetary challenges or changes at this time. So with what we've managed to put together, Sean and Jen and I have worked to make sure that everything that we're planning on doing as part of the study will fit within the confines of the study as they sit right now, and hopefully we'll be able to maintain that and maybe come in a little bit underneath. And then we have identified some of the key tasks that will be done by our administration and by Good Eve Consulting. So those were kind of the two other main things I think that I wanted to mention. And with that, Madam Chair, please, if we can do a quick intro, might be a great idea.
Absolutely. We can start with Audrey, go ahead.
Hi, Audrey Feisinger.
I'm Shelley Hiddle, one of the members at large.
And Patricia McNeil. Actually, we had the opportunity to meet Sean at the EDA. So nice to see you again, and we're happy to partner on this project. And also we have Councillor Dean joining us here as well.
Hi, Sean.
Councillor.
So that's our team, and we're off to a good start. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Actually, I know with the information that's been presented so far, and as I've been following through, I think your introduction this evening was very accurate and kind of brought at least my questions up to where we were and where the project stands. So I think the report is comprehensive.
Sean is, and I mean, I do honestly mean this. We've been friends for years, but Sean is a very rare unicorn in our field. In that in one individual you have a background of someone who has both municipal, consulting, ECDev, and planning experience in both of the sectors, and a name that is known by a number of EDOs. So we anticipate that as we do those outreaches, it should be pretty favorable.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
That's awesome.
All right, well, I think we can maybe let you get back to going skiing there, Sean. Or was it rafting? Anyways.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to further updates and as the project progresses.
Thank you all for your time tonight. It's very nice to meet you, and looking forward to meeting you in person. And Bert, we'll see you next week in person.
We'll see you next week. Travel safe, my friend.
Thank you very much. Good night, everyone. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Awesome. And with that, actually, just a point to clarify, Bert, then we would need a motion to accept the delegation as information?
Yes, so the motion that's on the RFD, if we were to have the committee endorse that one, just that we accept the SCOP project update as information, that would be fine.
I'll make a motion that we accept the SCOP project update information as presented. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Awesome, thanks, Alan. Alrighty, so moving right along, and actually we're a little bit early, and I'm just wondering if we have Councillor Culkin.
I don't see him online yet, but I'm just sending him a note to let him know we're running a bit early, and just to please join us as soon as he can.
Okay.
And then I think if we move on to that next item, Madam Chair, if everyone is okay with that, and then we'll just bounce back if that's okay.
Absolutely, let's take it away.
So we're on,
5.1,
so we're skipping 4.2 for now?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just so I know.
yeah, thank you.
And I apologize, I'm just finishing off the text here. But it's to Councillor Coker, just so you know. Okay, so with that, moving forward then to our next item.
Budgeting?
Yes, thank you. So we do have, and we are at the beginning of the budgeting process for the fall. So the intent with this RFD was to put forward to everyone sort of that we are at the beginning rather than the end of a process. And so please, I ask our committee to consider this a starting point rather than a finishing point, because we will of course have several rounds of administrative and council discussion as we go through the budget process. And so really what we wanted to do tonight, because I'm in the process of, by the end of this week, we have to have all of our sort of initial numbers into Denisha Ferguson, who is our new director for corporate services, so that they can sort of begin to put all of those bigger pieces together, and then we can provide an update to council. As part of this as well, and what you'll see later on in our meeting package, is we're also looking at priorities and service levels. And so by council looking at determining priorities and service levels, those things are going to directly figure into how the budget will be developed this year. So in the past, we have used priorities, but they've been priorities that we've put in with the budget package itself. And so this year, what we're doing is we're doing the key priorities for each department, the service levels for each department, dealing with all of that first, and then that will help us lead into the budget. And I hope I'm explaining that properly. Councillor Dean, does all of that sound correct to you? Oh, or did we lose him?
No, I'm here.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, the process sounds exactly as you stated it, Bert.
Okay, thank you, sir. So with that being said, in doing a bit of a review of our existing ECDEV budget for this year, what I've done is I've tried to sort of break this into three areas. So number one is I wanted to sort of show a balance of how we can reallocate some of our existing funds into priorities that either we've identified at our earlier strategic planning meeting or that have come up over the course of the last year, or that have been new opportunities that have come up. And the new opportunity that's come up is that Pembina Hills Barhead Area Career Expo. We used to do that on an annual basis, and then they've taken about a 4 or 5 year hiatus. So now we have an opportunity to jump back in and to be part of a planning team with that. So I thought that was kind of exciting to put that in. So then we have, of course, the Grow Your Business event, which we did the first one this year. And so we have that on there. The ability to increase our funding to the business support networks. Of course, with inflation, our ever important parade candy and parade budget, we need to add a little bit more oomph into. County promotion items, again, that's an inflationary kind of thing. So if we can add a little bit more into that. Meeting hosting, and that's for meals and venue rentals and advertising and transportation and some of those things. We seem to be doing a bit more of that, so we wanted to make sure we had a bit more room in that part of the budget. And then advertising overall, and again, total inflation and all of that. That gets us to what should be, how I'm going to term it to the committee is to say that 9,700 gives us an adequate amount for any local advertising that we would need to do. The Invest Alberta Guide that is put out by EDA every year, it's roughly 9,000 just for one full page in that guide. So we haven't advertised in that guide over the last few years. We have in the past advertised or been mentioned at least as part of the RITA items, because the RITA, hello Peter, please come in and join us, as part of the RITA advertising. And then there's always been other guides and other things that we've looked at. I mean, we know that advertising can be an endless, part of things. So that's where I'm going to stick to our guns and say that gives us plenty for local advertising. Any of the other stuff, we can talk about that on as it comes to us, kind of ad hoc basis. But then the other items are things that are in the budget currently that we have that can be reduced. And this is where some of the reallocations come from to pay for that first list. So the first is we do still have a Hamlet beautification budget, which is for Fort Assiniboine, and it is listed under the Communities in Bloom part of things, but we don't actually have a Communities in Bloom group there anymore. And so this year we did spend a little bit of it on flowers, but I'm going to talk to Denisha about that and see if there's a way that we can have that budget show up somewhere else other than economic development. So for our intents and purposes, if we can roll that into the reallocation. Next is under the contracted services. We did have a couple of items there, and there was one $1,500 item that we can reduce to zero, so there's some funds there for reallocation. And then the investment profiles, we have had a very wonderful budget of $20,000, and I think if we move that to 10, it gives us the ability to still produce kind of one updated guide per year or some kind of updated advertising and promo materials each year for the county on the ECDEV side, and then we can reallocate that other 10. So hopefully that is a good explanation, and that sort of covers off that first part. The second part of things is we have some of the operations for economic development and attendance at various events and conferences, and this is where we might see some additions and some other things thrown in. I don't have exact numbers yet, but something for our group to consider. We are seeing more and more conferences, and I think we've had just 2 more added this week, Councillor Dean, to the list of things that council should attend or would like to attend. And so some of those, when we have council going, it comes out of our council training budgets. Each council has an individual training budget. But if we're sending the EDO or if we're sending members at large of the committee, which our recent experience has been, there's a real benefit in making sure that we've got not just the EDO, but our members at large attending and being at events as well. There's probably some room there where we maybe need to ask for a little bit more. So we can kind of start to build that case, but I want to throw that out for discussion. And then this year, for the first time, we're putting in sort of I'm going to use the word contingency, and I can't remember if that was the word that Denisha told me to use or not, so I hope I'm not going too far off the mark by saying contingency. But the idea is to have a fund available where we have, when we get approved for a matching grant, we actually have the funds available to be able to participate. In the past, and especially over the last 5 years, there's been a number of programs that we haven't even been able to apply for because we've had no opportunity to identify matching funds, right? So the idea is that as a whole for the county, we would have a grant contingency fund there so that as we go through the process on various applications, if we do have a successful application, that gives us some money to work with on projects. And the 2 that you'll see there that are probably fairly familiar are the NRED and the SCOP. So unfortunately, this year's NRED application, those funds, we weren't able to complete the rebranding, so those funds have been returned back to the province. But we can make an application for next year's NRED, and then SCOP is coming back around again as well. So, and from what Kelly has told me so far, we can have multiple SCOP applications on the go at the same time. So we're working on project 1 with Sean, but maybe we'll have a project 2 which will be focused on something else, and we can go from there. And yes, Madam Chair, I'll hand it back to you, and I think Councillor Dean's got a question.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Dean.
Thanks. Through the chair to Bert, I just wanted to clarify the contingency fund, and I think you did already. So what you're saying is that somewhere within the overall county budget, there would be a contingency fund that would allow for grants to be acted on. So that that contingency fund is not embedded in our actual ECDev committee budget, but it's somewhere within the county's overall budget.
Correct, yes, that's my understanding. But we've been asked as managers to identify what are the programs that we think we might possibly need matching funds for, so that we can kind of put that pool together.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. That was one of the questions I was going to ask Patricia to ask you, but I'm glad I had a chance to ask myself.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. And then, that being said, there were a couple of other items that I have also identified in the last couple of days. And, no, here it is. And they are, we have a wonderful history with our tents in Woodlands County of being able to make them available for various events. We have a tent policy and all of that. And our tents are in severe need of replacement or upgrading, or at least some of them. So if we can allocate a $5,000 allocation to new tents, it isn't a capital allocation because it's under 20, so it would go into operating. We also have, and as everyone here knows, council had passed a schedule of events and consultations and things for us to do with our Indigenous Friends Society and with our Indigenous organizations. And there will likely be, we have a meeting next week between the Reeve and Councillor Dean and our Indigenous Friends group, a larger budget ask there, but that will actually fit in under probably the council budget. When we did the budget last year, we did incorporate, I think it was a $20,000 line item for Indigenous engagement. So that is something that fits into kind of our discussion, and as we're structured right now, economic development is in charge of that program, and we're working with council to make sure that we bring that through to fruition. So I just want everybody to understand that it's there. So it'll be very much like what we do with the Golden Triangle. It's funds that are in the budget, but that we are kind of working with. And yes, back to you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Councillor Dean.
Thanks. Through the chair, back to Bert again. Bert, can you, do you know off the top of your head how much of the $20,000 that was allocated to the Pathways Committee is unspent right now?
I honestly don't, and I'm not sure whether it was 10 or 20. I think I'm thinking, Ellen, at most, we're probably at around, we've maybe spent 5 of it. But so we've got some room within the existing, and we can ask for a carry forward if there's a significant amount there as well.
Okay, I seem to think it was 10, not 20, but I might be wrong.
Well, and you're probably right, because I know we had the discussion on 20, but maybe we did put it in as 10 for this year. And then, we knew that it was going to be one of those items that likely would grow over time, based on, of course, council's direction and where we want to go.
And Bert, if you don't mind, I think what I'd like to do is just shed some light on the intent of the meeting between the Reeve and myself and Jennifer Lanning. Next week's meeting is the pre-meeting before we get together with the Indigenous Friends Society. What we had asked the society back in July was to come up with kind of a wish list in terms of an operating budget that would include rental funds that would allow them to have their own space, because currently they do not have their own space. So it was really blue sky conversation, but I explained to them that council needed this information prior to our budgeting process, and that if they could just do some kind of a thumbnail sketch on what it would cost to rent some space, at least some space out there, that would be helpful when we deliberated our budget. So to that end, they put together a very professional looking proposal, and they have an ask inside, and of course, their ask is they understand that anything at budget time is up for careful review. But that's what the intent of the meeting next week is to go through that proposal, internally, and then come back to the society with a recommendation that we would like to bring forth to our council. So we're, excuse the pun, but we're walking the path with them, and I just think that if they do have their space, it'll allow them to conduct more cultural training opportunities, and it will help them along the way to their friendship center status, which once a society, friendship society, reaches that friendship center status provincially, it qualifies them for a different level of funding. So we're trying to help them get there, and we're hoping that council is amenable to their proposal.
Awesome. Thank you, Councillor Dean, for that update. I think that's a very exciting project, and I certainly look forward to hearing more about it. Okay, is there,
Then the only final item I had is, again, due to inflation, we've seen a rise in hotel rates, meal rates, travel costs, all of that. Council's done a really good job, I think, of updating kind of the numbers in regards to mileage and to some of that. But on that hotel side, we might see a bit of a bump in the budget there based on average hotel night costs and some of those things. So that was really, I think, the last item that I had so far. And then the exciting thing for the committee is this is the time to blue sky a bit. If we have some more that we would like to add in, we all know a budget time that there's never any promises, but it never hurts to throw the ask out there and let council consider it. So.
did you guys have any questions or comments on the budget?
I actually had one.
Okay, go ahead.
So on the Pembina Hills Barhead Career Expo, why would we do that?
So, excellent question. And it comes back to, so we had our Career Expo today.
Right.
And our partners around the Career Expo today we work with the Town of Whitecourt, Northern Gateway School Division, Living Waters School Division, Community Futures is our group that kind of manages the funds, GOA, and the Chamber. The Chamber actually applied for, it was the Labor Market Partnership Grant, which helps us to fund and bring in the speakers and to do all of that. So following the Whitecourt model, Barhead is going to try to reinstitute, new Careers Next Gen is also a major player, and they're the ones who are one of the major players in getting the Barhead group back going again. The big reason to do it for Woodlands County is, even though Northern Gateway brings their students in from Onaway and from Fox Creek for the grade 9 to grade 12s to take in the event here, our kids at the north end of the county that have their primary school in Fort Assiniboine and then go to Barhead High School and middle school, they don't have the opportunity to attend. So simply because we have a large number of county residents that are part of the Hill School Division, that's why.
Okay.
Good question. And also then, Bert, I had a question in regards to, under the update for the investment profiles, I was curious about the current investment profile that had been recently updated, if you had an estimated cost on what that update was.
I will have the paid invoices. I think we were, you know what, I don't even want to throw a number out because I'll probably get it wrong. Under 5 total, I believe, for both the investment profile and for the 2-pager
Okay.
is where I'm going to say we're at, or I'll say 5-ish. And then the second guide that is, it's on the books to be completed this year, and I'm hoping we can still deliver it by the end of the year, is to do an energy guide. And so we have contracted with a company out of Calgary to do that for us, and the intent on that is we would do it a little bit different than how we did all of the primary stories and all of the local work on the Ag Chronicles. But what we're going to do is to approach some of our large energy producers within the county, ask them each to provide us with 2 pages of information on their company, including some of their local statistics, such as number of employees, labor pool, local involvement, some of those kinds of things. And then with that, and working with their communications group, we have a publisher that would put all of that together for us so that we have a bit of an energy sector guide, but with Woodlands County-based information from several different companies. So that's the intent in the profile. We just, it's in the hopper, it's just at the bottom of the hopper. Or the top of the hopper, I guess, depends on, I guess, grain comes out the bottom of the hopper, right? So it's at the top of the hopper, not the bottom right now.
Excellent.
Thanks, Peter.
And also, I was curious in regards to, for example, we'll use that as an example, the site visit that you guys had just done. Is there anything from an economic development standpoint, when, especially in regards to budgeting, that a tool that you would have liked to have had that you didn't have access to?
I think that's a fair question, because I anticipate us doing more of this type of site tour. I think it was interesting how everything came together, because we had some swag bags for each of our VIPs. We did have lunch provided. We did have to rent a commercial vehicle to be able to take everybody out to keep us into one vehicle, so we had a bus rental. The printed materials is the investment guide and all of that. We can certainly always work to have a little bit more, and I can't specify anything right now that we would absolutely need, but more is always better. And the more information we can provide, the better off we are. In the past, what we've done, I guess if there's an item on my wish list, would be we've done kind of a local prospectus before with one of our companies, specifically around their industrial lands. And what we've identified over the course of the last year and a half, is that we've got several large players that have industrial lands that might be able to have partnering sites, or that, you know, there might be an opportunity there for further development. But we've never really sat down to work with them to sort of put together like a land prospectus, shall we say, right? Or to show exactly what our developable sites are within Woodlands. So something along those lines, where we could work with partners and then be able to produce like a 2-page realtor sheet with the basics on, here's what this property is, the acreage, here's the connections, here's the possible uses. Something like that might be really helpful, even with all of the work we're doing with site selectors and all of that, right? So thank you for that question. It took me a minute to kind of dig that out, but yeah, our own local kind of land prospectus would be really neat.
Okay, is there any further questions on this section? Comments? Awesome. Alrighty, then actually I would entertain a motion to accept the discussion as information.
I'll make the motion and accept the information as discussed.
Thank you. Is there any further questions, comments? All in favor? Awesome, thank you. That one is passed. All right, so then we can pop back to item 4.2. Take it away, Bert.
Wonderful. So if I can get him to, he's not used to sitting in this chair, so we'll see how comfortable he is.
It's like you can join us around the table, Peter, there's a lot of room.
So thank you for joining us, Councilor Logan.
Thank you.
Or should I say, Chair of the Growth Rita / Growth Alberta Partnership. So all of you, I'm sure, know Councilor Kulkin, and there's of course many things I can update you about the Rita, but I think that having Councilor Kulkin here to give us the chair's perspective was a great idea. And when it fit into his schedule for tonight, he graciously accepted to be here with us. So I'll hand it over to you, sir, and Jen and I are here to back up if needed.
Good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me here, because I think this is really important for us to, as a regional economic group, to really build the synergies with not only our committee's partners, but any prospective ones as well. Because at the end of the day, one of the things that we're beginning to realize is that rural Alberta is very unique here in this area in a lot of the things that we do. And because we've kind of embarked on a different way of looking at economic development, it's really been a challenge. And I know, Patricia, you were involved in the original.
That's a rural definition.
Okay. Yeah, you were involved in that original engagement session, which was the first real, I would say that was the first real good step forward for growth, because that started to identify that we were really, really behind in the way we should be approaching economic development regionally. We've got a very small alliance, that's Mayorthorpe, Woodlands, and Swan Hills. And so even within, those are two actually urban municipalities. And so their needs are quite a bit different, but also much the same. It's very important for the bigger rural municipalities to always be engaged with them, because if we're not here, or we're not here, they're not here. So when we did this engagement session, it was really interesting how it came about. And one of the goals that growth did have was to foster some relationships with municipalities to rebuild that alliance. And so what we did was we invited the First Nations, Métis municipality school boards, interested business leaders to a session of discovery. And that was to better understand the needs and dynamic that would allow social economic alliance to be successful. And it was a 2-day event, and it was a pretty profound event, because even our consultants had never ever had that many people in a room that were that engaged. Like, I think it was 2 days of complete engagement. And I'd like to say thanks to Patricia for creating what we call the
Patricia documents,
She,
which is a summary of those 2 days events.
it's a summary of those 2
And we
days.
have officially now said, this is the Patricia document
Yeah.
at several reading meetings. So thank you.
And we refer to it all the time because it's quite complex. And the whole dynamic changed within that engagement session. And we began to understand that we were talking in terms that were not familiar with everybody. So we developed a strategy over, I think we called it a community of communities. Because you have the business community, you have the indigenous community, you have the school community, you have your local economic development communities. So then that included everybody in the discussion. And I think that was the kind of the most difficult thing, because now we had to compile that information and try to figure out how we build a strategic plan around it, and also move it forward in a way that was good for the alliance. And I know Bert was very frustrated with us, and we had some internal issues that we needed to deal with. We had some problems with the Wild project, and it took a while to sort that out, and we did. And then the other one was that we don't have the administrative capacity, so it was a working board. And because all of us are pretty busy in the roles that we had, we set a couple of people up as executive directors, and I think we set them up to fail because we really didn't have a strategy. I think that would be a fair way to put it. And so then, with Bert's guidance and a little bit of collective guidance from all of the different people, and we sorted some of the personalities out, and we decided just recently that we were going to assign, we didn't want to lose the intellectual stuff that had been gained over the years. And so how were we going to increase our administrative capacity? So what happened was we got Janet, who was the chair, to take on the interim executive director role. And then they decided that I should take the chairman's role. And so that really started to really divide the responsibilities. And so my responsibility is to move this thing forward as far as the regional partners go. And now her responsibility is to make sure that the administrative capacity is met. Grant writing, contacts with government and all of those things. So that part of it now is going to have to be sorted out. There's still some struggles there, but I think we've all got the resolve to solve that problem. So now we have a strategic plan, a vision with a strategic plan with all of the pillars under it. And what we're doing is we're really working on the goals and objectives so we can set priorities. And we want to put timelines on those priorities. And because we have one last gasp at this, we need to get this done. And everybody on the board recognizes that. So that's kind of where that part of it is at. So we built the strategic plan, and the data that was collected in that engagement session was what we used to build that pathway. And then on the tourism side of it, we have the completed strategic plan for Wild. We completed the feasibility study to determine the viability, because there was a debate over this being a destination marketing organization that stands standalone. And in reality, it needs to, but it can't under the current. It has to still function under growth because it doesn't have the financial capacity to do that, nor the administrative capacity. So it has become, we removed the committee, and the committee now works directly as a group with the board. And that makes it streamlines everything, and it was an important thing to do because we started to get back to the structure that needed to be in the organization, because it was a very, very loose structure. So we got that done. This year we had some operator training and networking sessions to help increase the awareness of tourist opportunity in our region. And even though some of the municipalities that have operators that are not aligned with us in our alliance, the question always was, do we keep those operators in there? And it would be stupid for us to say, just because you live across the border, that would go totally against the regional concept, that we would do that, because the operators are the ones that are networking with the ones that are in our zone. So we've got that sorted out now. That's not going to happen. We published the visitor's guide again this year, and they changed the Wild website to be a bit more friendly, and we give the Wild program the admin support through what we do as growth. We've got 2 board-approved grant-funded projects right now, fostering rural economic growth, and RED grants. One of them, the problem we have with the one is that it is typically like you have you write the program for a certain project that you want to do, and then they only fund 25% of it. So it really undermines any value in that program. So we're allowed to keep that grant, I believe, till 26.
Yeah, I believe.
And so we're gonna see if it works for us, and we find something that we can do that would be meaningful for growth, we're gonna do it, otherwise we'll give it back. Because it serves no purpose to do it otherwise. The other one is I'm really excited about, because it starts to get us to understand better what our role is in this relationship building. And that is that, and that came from the collective information that we gathered from the different conferences we went to. We discovered quite quickly that there's a huge problem in the education part of economic development under the current things that are going on. When we were at the Carbon Capture and the Global Energy Show, there were no elected officials there, which surprised us, from municipalities, because that's where you go to glean your information. Bruce and I were the only 2 there. So what we did was we thought, okay, we're just gonna go around and start chatting it up with all of the different industry players that were there. And the minute we told them where we were from, we had the audience. Like we want to talk to you. And so we talked about what their challenges were. And their challenges is that municipalities don't know how to engage with industry to have economic development happen. So from the conversations we had with them, we discovered that the first thing we gotta do is educate our elected officials, and the second one was that we were told over and over again, you gotta get into the schools. You gotta start at grade 5 and have kids understand how economic development works and what it is and how they can be engaged. And so that automatically fit right in with our goals, because we had school boards who don't understand how they can be involved there. So now we've got a place where we can interface industry and business with education, not only at the elected official level, but at the community level, which we find out now with discussions we had with some nuclear people over SMRs is incredibly important, because people want to know, if we're going to have nuclear, what is it all about? And they don't want it from somebody who's trying to invest. They want it from somebody who's saying, this is how it works. Because then it's more of a credible, because you're not trying to sell something. You're trying to say, hey, this is the new technology. And that's what. So it was a really interesting for us to have that information when we started building these pillars for growth. The other real interesting one was that one of the women that we had as a interim executive person, her daughter, incredibly intelligent young lady, she started a, what do they call themselves? GAP, Generation Gap.
Yes, yeah.
They're a bunch of young people who are now developing a strategy to align themselves with us, and they're going to be our ambassadors in the school. And these kids are amazing.
To have sort of a youth wing for economic development.
Exactly. And so
Sweet.
Bruce and I were in at the Global Energy Show, and we met Rebecca Schultz, who's the Minister of Environment, and she asked, we've met her before, she asked us what we were doing, we had a conversation, and so we told her, and she said, really? That's what you're doing? She says, talk to me. She says, we'll see if we can get you some resources. So just from being there and trying to figure out, because we didn't know what our role was. So now we're gonna develop some workshops and actually have, at some point in time, I believe we'll have a conference where we'll bring all of those people together and try to come up with an organization that's actually gonna champion collecting data, building relationships, and doing all the things that would interest people who want to have investment projects in our region. And we don't really care where they happen. What we care about is that everybody who invests in our region knows where the resources are, where the best spin-off industries would be, because that's how economic development creates a diversity. And so it's been a really interesting journey, because when I got into this 3 years ago, the only person I had to keep pounding economic development into my head was Bert. And then some of the people that we met at the EDA conference really solidified that. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think it was SiteLink that, because I still speak with some of the site selectors that were at SiteLink. They keep asking, like, where are you at? So that means there's incredible interest. They just don't have nothing to sink their teeth into. So that's gonna be our role, is to give them something to sink their teeth into and say, yeah, this makes sense. So that's how economic development works. That's what we're doing. I think I'm gonna be responsible for now going out to all of these. I'm just finishing the speaking notes for growth. We'll have our vision and our strategic pillars. And then Bert was kind enough, and Jen were kind enough to help us out with the sales pitch, which isn't really a sales pitch, but it is. But it's unique. I was never aware of how to do that, but Bert gave us the tools to do that. And I'm gonna have that finished hopefully by tomorrow night, and then it'll go to the board, and then they'll approve it, and then we'll have a leaflet that says, this is what we're about, and these are the questions that we're asking. Is it worthwhile for you to get involved? And I think that's where we're at now. And it all came together probably on the 16th.
Yep.
Like, that's how long it took for the bureaucrats to get us to understand that we better get our ass in gear. So, so that's where we're at. One of the things that I really would like this economic development board to know from our Rita, the conversations that we've had, is that we view the things that you do, things that you contribute in your circle, is going to become more and more important, because we need that direct relationship with councils, even though we are councillors ourselves. But the big one is that if we have our administration understand the importance of the influence that economic development officers have on our regional development, because that's the one, if we were just doing that, and this is what's happened in the past, we had economic development alliances with really no professional direction. And the question I asked at High Prairie was, of the CAO there, I asked him, I says, where's your economic development? And he does it off the corner of his desk, and he says, I have no experience. And that's normal, I think, in Alberta. So we have the potential of having possibly 3 EDOs that will be able to guide this. So we really have a strong ability to do some really neat stuff. And because we've changed the language, it's social economic development, which means we're going to never ever not talk about the social capital we have to build with the economic capital. It's going to be an interesting one, because we've got such diversity in the people that are there at the table. And so I think when we get a collective system going, it's going to be completely different than what we've seen before. And I just hope we can get it done. So.
Hope so too. Go ahead, Bert.
So just to build on a couple of things that Peter said, to me, I think our number one most exciting goal, and the thing that gives me both immense hope and immense nightmares, is in North America, we have roughly $1 trillion invested annually in new projects of various types. And when you look at that and you go, how do I make some of that land here? That's really the key question, right? So what's exciting is we have the opportunity to work at it both from an individual municipal perspective and through GAP from that bigger regional lens and bigger regional perspective. So we're kind of, playing, I won't say even both sides, but we're playing parallel courses on how we can kind of land and do some of that together. The other thing, and as Peter mentioned, I think very well, is the more partners we have at the table, the better and the stronger we are. And so we have both of our other municipalities now looking at hiring and having their own EDOs or somebody with those kinds of skills. And as we get more and more involved with our Indigenous communities, we're seeing more and more Indigenous EDOs as well. And so, I certainly do my best to maintain my skill sets and all of that, as do I think all of my ECDEV brethren, but it's got to be kind of frightening when it's only my opinion that's around the table from the professional side of things. So it's always good to have more than just a Bert around the table. So I very much kind of understand and appreciate that. So it's been a growth experience with growth, and I actually didn't mean for that pun to happen, but it just kind of did. I apologize. But I think where we're at is the phoenix is rising from the ashes at this point, is probably how I can best summarize where the conversation is.
Well, one of the interesting things with this socioeconomic, it's very hard to define. But the conversations I've been in with some of the SiteLink guys who have investors is they ask this question. They said, why is it that you never invest in yourselves? Because he says Canada is notorious for having investment. Billions of dollars leave here. And then when the market starts to deteriorate, then the companies leave. And so we have to figure out, and I don't know, but there's some smart people out there that are working on it. We have to figure out how we create an investment style that allows Albertans or our region to have ownership in whatever is here. And that's going to be an interesting challenge.
How do we diversify? How do we support our own clusters? How do we support our own value chains? Those are all
Those are all
things that
those
this group's talked
conversations.
about, right? And it all builds back to both, how do we do it at both the regional and the individual municipal perspective?
And there seems to be an investor appetite for that now. They don't want to take the risk alone anymore. And that's kind of the first time I've ever got a sense that, you know, if you ante up, we will too.
What's happening, I think, is that, you know, we've all read many news headline about company X wants to come in and build this, and then there's a massive amount of public pushback, and there's a black eye and hurt feelings, and things don't happen, and all of that. And I think that the exciting thing is when you've got planning and economic development aligned, and the community engagement piece aligned. And again, I'll go back to where we have within our council strategic plan, strategic economic development, the stuff that fits, right? It gives us a chance to pre-qualify, to make as easy a pathway as possible, abiding by all of the guidelines and rules and regulations and everything that we need to, in order to have things come in and land here well with the least amount of pushback and the least amount of concern and the least amount of, you know, uncertainty and all of those kinds of things, because that's what big projects are looking for. And not just big ones, but little ones too.
And that's the education component. And so I'm excited. I think that we have some huge opportunity. We've got some really good people around the table. You know, we've got the resources like yourselves as economic, you guys are looking at this and there's no such thing as a bad idea. There just isn't, because sometimes somebody throws an idea out there and you can't really put your finger on it. But sometimes just a little piece of that fits into the puzzle. And that's the exciting part, is that don't engage, because there's a lot of good people working on trying to make this world a better place. And I think we have an opportunity to be in the forefront there.
I totally agree.
So thank you very much.
Is there do you guys have any questions for Councillor Folcom? I think that was a great update. I'm really glad to see that the organization is going forward, and, you know, I wish you well on getting as many new members and growing it, and whatever we can do as a committee to support that, then definitely let us know, so.
And then just a final note on that, Madam Chair, so partnerships fill in very high as well in our top 5 of the things that we want to do. And money for Rita for the next year is within the existing budget, and we're hoping that just carries forward. I didn't even put that on the list because, well, I was hoping.
And if you guys know any young people that really want to start to, you know, dip their fingers a little bit into understanding municipal things and how important local government is, let us know, because we would love to have them engage with our group, and that's just going to build that capacity that we need, because we don't understand what the younger generation really is looking at, and the sooner we understand that, you know, for me, economic development is a challenge, but I've lived a completely different era, and these kids are going to see things that we don't see. So
I really appreciate that comment, and I know actually when we were having our budget discussion earlier, and you had reminded me of something that's come up around this committee table in the past, when we had talked about the potential idea of having, whether it was shadow members of, you know, bringing youth into our board in some capacity.
Yeah.
So we had discussed that, and somewhere along the line, that has kind of fallen out of discussion.
We haven't had the opportunity to change the terms of reference for this committee specifically, but it was interesting to see it come up around the RETA table, and I think certainly we can have some Woodlands members on the RETA or on the GAP part of things for the generation gap, and then maybe even have them report back or invite them to come and see us from time to time.
I definitely, I think it is something we should keep on our radar going forward, and actually, I guess even maybe I would ask for what the committee's appetite would be moving forward to put on a future meeting agenda to have a discussion specifically about how we would further engage youth within our committee,
That'd be awesome.
so. Okay.
That will be absolutely unique for, nobody else is doing this.
Well, and the thing is, I think we also need to recognize that we have a young demographic. And for example, there's even just a comment that was made, we were asked to do a video introducing committees and so on. And it's really important to understand the learning styles are changing. And what's happening now is a lot of people aren't reading a lot of copy and so on. They're watching quick little videos, and that's a really important part of communication. So when we want to be communicating with, for example, advertising for new members at large, or, what our committees may be doing, these are things that's how we are engaging with this younger demographic. So if we have no members of that demographic around the table, it's hard to maybe understand. We're guessing to a certain degree of what they want. So with that part of it to be
We need
interesting.
somebody with some riz so that things don't look too skippity.
Exactly. So,
All right.
My son's 13, so trying to learn the lingo.
and with that, I would ask if there's a motion to accept the delegation as information.
I'll make a motion to accept the delegation as information.
Awesome. All in favor, or is there any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you, Councillor Dean. And,
Madam
Oh,
Chair, did you want to make a second motion to add that item to a future agenda?
yes, then no, actually, point of order, so I'm a little
I
out of
should say, would you like
practice.
to ask someone to
Yes,
make that motion?
that's what I was just gonna
Thank you.
ask. Yes, definitely. I would like to ask if somebody would be interested in making a motion that we add an agenda item at a future meeting to discuss youth involvement within our committee.
So I'll make a motion that we consider adding an item to a future agenda to look at including youth on our committee in some capacity.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Thank you, Councillor Dean. Excellent.
Looks like we're gonna lose him.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Colkin, that was
He looks like
much
he's sleeping.
appreciated.
And whenever you, I'd just like to add, if you ever want an update or something, I'll try to, can't promise, but I'll try to keep updates coming, and maybe just request them for your agenda, and I'll just send one and you can put it on the agenda.
As Councillor Coulton said, even just in the last couple of weeks, since the meeting and kind of the new capacity and everything that's there, we've got a number of things that seem to be running as like clockwork and as they should right now. With both Peter and Janet in distinct roles, and Mayor Jabush in her time as chair, and all of that. She was juggling a lot, but did a wonderful job of advancing a lot of things. And it's interesting now to have her, with her direction, just solely focused on this executive director position, because it's,
We just don't lose that knowledge.
Exactly.
it's just been great to kind of see how things are actually happening in the time frame and at the quality that they should. So it's exciting news.
Awesome.
Thank you much. You
Thank
take care.
I will be, yeah, that was great.
Thanks,
Thank you for
Jen.
joining us.
Thanks a lot, you guys.
Thanks, have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, we'll move on to new business, and I'll turn it back over to you, Bert, for 6.1.
Okay, thank you very much. So that is our site link update. So this year, well, as everyone knows, we hosted the first site link in Canada here in Woodlands Whitecourt back in 2022. In 2023, Lac La Biche County hosted, and Shelley and I attended that event. And then earlier this year, we had in Grand Prairie a site link, and Chair Patricia and I attended that event. We did just have over this last week the second site link in Canada this year in the Bonnyville Cold Lake area. It was hosted by the MD of Bonnyville with Cold Lake, and the Best Western there being the conference venue. And it was once again a wonderful event. We had 4 site selectors there that were new folks that we hadn't seen before, and 3 that we do know and have gotten to know very well. And I've got a number of follow-up, individual follow-up items with each of the site selectors that have sort of come out of things. As Councillor Culkin mentioned, he's still sort of staying in touch with past site selectors we've met, and we know that we've pulled heavily from some of the training and things that we've received coming from SiteLink through the years. So really, I think probably the big things to report, and I'm trying to think what I had written in, because I think I've got a bit more information for us later on in the in-committee part of things, but we had, as I said, a couple of individual things coming out. The exciting part, I think, for this site link was MLA Shane Getson was the keynote speaker. And as part of his keynote speech, there were 2 things that he focused on. So in his current role as an MLA and within GOA, he's in charge of developing trade corridors. And so he had a big focus on helping us to understand how trade corridors and understanding, even from the provincial level, the best places for projects to site and the best access to the bigger parts of logistics. That helps us to, again, attract bigger and other projects and to diversify and to do all of those things. So it was very interesting to hear him talk on that part of it. But the twist that he had as part of his presentation was Fortress North America. So that was interesting. We know that over the last few years, we've had discussions and things about food security and different things and all of that. And we know kind of where that global political piece is now and all of these things. We've seen a lot of reshoring of companies that were located in other climes that maybe had at one point better business cases and all of that, but they've come back. One of the site selectors referred to friendshoring, which is where you have US-based companies that are moving out of nations that are not so friendly to countries that are more friendly or part of various alliances and all of those things. And then what sort of built into all of that was, of course, being in Cold Lake and them having the opportunity to tour the air base and to understand that we're part of the F-35 program, and there's only a very small number of countries that technology is being shared with. And so there was a lot of emphasis at this site link on that Canada-US partnership, and it was really kind of great. So those are kind of the big takeaways, and if there's any other immediate questions, I'm happy to answer.
Is there any questions from the board? Actually, then with that, I would entertain a motion to accept your report as information.
Would you like to make a motion to accept the report as, I'm sorry,
As information.
as information? Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Councillor Dean, awesome, thank you. Alrighty, and moving right along. Just a quick question before we move into, actually, no, I'll get to that. So under the work plan updates, essentially, we're just looking for a motion for information.
Well, and so for this meeting, where normally we would do the work plan updates, the blue sky and the information items, given the busyness of the schedule at this time, we wanted to focus on kind of those primary items that we knew we needed to address tonight. I'm certainly willing to address if there are any questions on sort of where we're at, but I think that some of that will get answered as we get into talking about some of the service levels and some of those things, because so our work plan, just kind of a history of recent events, and over the summer we didn't have an Open Farm Days entry this year, so we didn't do anything with Open Farm Days. The July 1st Canada Day Parade, we didn't have that event this year because we had no organizer for the parade. We did, however, have the Hamlet Hoedown, and we had, I believe we had 4 councillors that were at the Hamlet Hoedown, and we were in charge of the parade entry and everything for that. And I've got some great photos that we can share. The new path forward that I think we found is you can get so many really cool inflatable costumes now of various types. You're probably all familiar with the T-Rex and the dinosaur. Well, we had an 8-foot inflatable cow in the back of the Woodlands County truck, and my son was in a cow outfit, and we had Jen's 2 kids. Ella was dressed up as a cowgirl, I think, and Everett was there as the bull rider. And we had a very jealous counselor who I shall not name, but he said, "Where's mine?" And so at the Christmas event, when we go to do that, we already have a great plan, we think, for getting some folks into some costumes around the Christmas part of things. So a bit more environmentally friendly and a bit much more affordable than in the past when we've done lots of paper kind of things on a parade float where you have your one-time single-use little rollout flowers and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we'll continue on and we'll see what happens. But it's amazing what you can do with an electric generator and a few blow-up costumes, let me tell you.
Great team spirit.
It
Nice to include your
really was a
families.
lot of fun, and the hoots and the hollers and the the neat thing about parades. I always say that the best thing about a parade is when you're on the float or when you're driving the float, you get to just drive around and collect smiles, and we collected a lot of smiles. So,
Nice.
and thank you, Jen, and your family for all being part of that.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So those were kind of the big things, and then the Career Expo today, and yeah, we're into now. We have the Indigenous event coming up on September 30th, so there's a few things we need to set up and do there for deliverables. We also had the running event for St. Joe's School. It was yesterday. We provided tents for that. We've had several other events in the last month and a half that we've provided tents for and some of those things. And yeah, we're just kind of continuing along, so.
Okay, and just to clarify, so there's no RFDs for those items 7 through 9?
No,
So-
we didn't submit any for this meeting, Madam Chair, no.
Okay,
But
so.
if there is anything that the committee would like to see, we can certainly send it through email. If there's any other reports or committees or updates or info items or anything like that that you might want to see.
Okay, did any members have any questions in regards to those?
No.
Okay, then my question is, are we good to move into our closed meeting session, or would somebody like a 2-minute break? Okay.
Okay,
If
well
that
then,
being
if
said,
that's the case, and if we can get a motion to move in and we'll record the time and then we'll stop our feed, and just because it makes it much easier, when we come out of our in-committee session, we'll just pass that motion that we've gone back into our regular part of things. And unless there's any really specific motions or anything that we need to pass, we probably won't resume the online stream. We'll just move straight into adjournment and encourage folks to check our minutes.
okay, perfect. Then could I please have a motion to move into closed session?
I'll make a motion that we move the meeting into closed session.
Awesome, thank you. Any further discussion?
And we just need to
Oh,
note
and
the
the
time on
time
that as
is-
well,
Oh, sorry.
7:20.
7:20.
At 7:20 PM.
Awesome. All in favor? Counselor Dean, perfect, thank you. Alrighty, then just let us know, Jen, when we're